the United States striking two facilities in Syria targeting Iranian-backed militias following attacks on U.S. forces. I want to bring in now our CNN military analyst, retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton, and also retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. Colonel Leighton, first of all, these strikes do come after what we saw were a series of attacks on U.S. interests in the region that seemed very much coordinated. What message is the United States sending here?
Well, basically, Abby, the message is don't do this, don't attack us. There were 12 attacks against bases in Iraq and 4 attacks, I believe, in Syria. So these kinds of attacks are ones that to put U.S. personnel at risk. And ironically, they are bases that have been used to fight ISIS, which is also in Iran's interest to fight ISIS. They were, in essence, quasi-allies with us in a very odd way against ISIS. And this is something that they should not be doing to us at this particular point. But of course, they have a larger mission in mind on the Iranian side. They're supporting Hamas. And yes, these attacks were most certainly coordinated.
And General Hertling, we've been talking to you on this show for weeks now about the risk of escalation in the region. The United States is walking a real tightrope here in how it responds to Iranian provocation, but how it's trying to not actually escalate this crisis. How do you think they are striking that balance right now?
Well, first of all, Abby, you have to understand that the president has given the Ayatollah a warning to stop these attacks. As Cedric said, it's against the Al-Tanf air base in Syria and against both Erbil and Al-Assad air base in Iraq. Those are three places, truthfully, that have been struck multiple times by Iranian missiles and attempted Iranian proxy attacks. But they've been somewhat ad hoc. But within the last couple of days, since the 17th of October, those attacks, as Cedric just said, have increased in not only rocket attacks, but also drone attacks. They have been warned several times by both the president and the Secretary of Defense that we have the right to defend our military personnel in bases overseas. Secretary Austin also put out a message tonight after the president gave the same message to the Ayatollah, saying this is not an extension of the war in Gaza. This is us protecting our personnel. And he has warned the Iranians several times that the United States knows through their intelligence sources that Iranian proxies were behind these attacks. So it was a warning. It was finally executed in terms of an attack against those Iranian proxy elements, the PMF. And I think there's continuous attempts to say this is not part of the Israeli mission in Israel, but it is us defending our soldiers who are stationed in bases in the region.
Now, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin issuing a strongly worded statement tonight directed at Iran. He says Iran wants to hide its hand and deny its role in these attacks against our forces. We will not let them. I want to bring in now back to the show General Mark Hertling, who is here with us. Lloyd Austin also saying these are targeted and in self-defense. What's your reaction to the way that he directed this at Iran, but tried to say it's limited in its scope?
Well, Abby, first you have to know that there are 900 U.S. military personnel at the Al-Tanf base that was attempted to be struck and was struck by these Iranian proxies. The second thing you need to know is there is great intelligence. We have been watching these proxies with various means, various intelligence means. That's the way the U.S. military works. So when Secretary Austin, who has fought in this area before, in fact, he was my boss in Iraq, says that, hey, we know they're hiding their hand. We know they're hiding their hand. We know there's intelligence behind them giving orders to Iranian proxies, the so-called Popular Mobilization Front, saying, strike the Americans. And because there have been so many strikes in the last few days, these are not the typical random strikes by these paramilitary groups. This is a planned attempt at intimidating the U.S. And what the secretary is saying is, we're not going to allow you to do that. And we know that Iran is trying to expand this conflict to take the attention away from what Israel's doing in Gaza.
Yeah. General Mark Hertling, grateful to have you here on all of that. Thank you.
New overnight, the Israeli Defense Forces conducted targeted raids inside Gaza before withdrawing. This is the second time in 2 days that that's happened. Video published by the IDF shows moving tanks and armored vehicles, as well as strikes on buildings and in open areas. All this happening as tensions in the region escalate. The Pentagon says that the U.S. carried out airstrikes in Syria targeting 2 facilities linked to Iranian-backed militias. Defense officials say this was in retaliation for attacks against U.S. forces in the region over the last 10 days. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the strikes were, quote, narrowly targeted in self-defense, emphasizing that they were separate from the war in Israel and Gaza. Austin also promised further strikes if the attacks by Iran on U.S. forces continue. Jim Sciutto is in the Golan Heights for us, and Kim Dozier, CNN Global Affairs analyst, also joins us. But Jim, of course, we want to go first to you on the scene there. Bring us up to speed on what happened with these strikes overnight and why the U.S. made this move.
Good morning, Casey. Standing here in the Golan, and you can see Syria behind me here. It's just a reminder that in the northern part of Israel, and when you get into the Golan, you have, in effect, 2 international borders that Israel is directing its attention at, certainly Lebanon, where Hezbollah is based, but also Syria, where you have Iranian-backed militias as well. And the significance of these U.S. strikes overnight is that it appears to be retaliation for strikes on U.S. forces by Iran-backed forces in both Syria and Iraq. But notably, this is a base that doesn't just have, at times, Iranian-backed militias. It has actual Iranian forces from the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. And it's not clear that the U.S. prior to these strikes was certain that there were no Iranian personnel there. In other words, a risk there that these U.S. strikes could have impacted Iranian forces on the ground. That shows the seriousness with which the U.S. is responding to strikes on its own forces in the region. I'll tell you where we are this morning. The border area looks calm, but there is certainly, like in the northern part of Israel near Lebanon, a large Israeli military presence. They are on alert. They are watching very closely.
Yeah, no, of course they are. Kim Dozier, let me bring you into this conversation. What message does this send to Iran?
To keep its proxies in check, that it could risk U.S. retaliation for any strikes that it makes, again, on U.S. forces. And this is important as Iranian proxies and Iranian-backed politicians inside Iraq have called for violence against the U.S., against U.S. facilities. Iran has these proxies and supporters in a number of locations where it can sort of like a lever turn up the aggravation, the violence against U.S. and other facilities. And Lloyd Austin is sending a message that the U.S. is moving forces into the region to take care of that, and that if it happens again, the U.S. will consider striking again.
Jim, what do we know about the nature of the injuries that were sustained by U.S. troops?
At this point, it does not appear to be life-threatening, but let's be clear, when you attack bases in this way, you could very easily kill U.S. forces, and of course, that could conceivably level up the U.S. response. We've seen deadly attacks by Iranian-backed forces, militias in the past on U.S. forces in the region, and that just shows what a tinderbox this region is right now. The chances of escalation, right, is that a small thing that perhaps, whether it's Iran or the U.S., intends to be limited to some degree, it's not clear that they can enforce those limits, right? If you drop enough rockets on a base, you might kill U.S. forces or contractors. If the U.S. drops enough bombs and strikes on an Iranian base inside Syria, you might very well kill Iranian forces. And that presents the danger then, of course, of further escalation. It's just another reminder that you have many fronts in this conflict right now and many players with real dangers of things moving beyond where any of the parties want it to move, right? And that's the nature of the alert right now.